They would be outskirters who were getting a thin line and wondering what to do about it. He was running over some of these in his mind when Dandelion appeared. "The sooner we're off the better, I reckon," said Dandelion. "I don't much like the look of things. After I'd persuaded Hawkbit here to join us, I was just starting to talk to a few more when I found that Toadflax fellow had followed me down the run. I want to know what you're up to," he said. I don't think he believed me when I told him I was only trying to find out whether there were any rabbits who wanted to leave the warren. He asked me if I was sure I wasn't working up some kind of plot against the Threra, and he got awfully angry and suspicious. It put the wind up me, to tell you the truth. So I've just brought Hawkbit along and left it at that. "I don't blame you," said Hazel. "Knowing Toadflax, I'm surprised he didn't knock you over first and ask questions afterwards. All the same, let's wait a little longer. Blackberry ought to be here soon." Time passed. They crouched in silence while the moon shadows moved northward again in the grass. At last, just as Hazel was about to run down the slope to Blackberry's burrow, he saw him come out of his hole, followed by no less than 3 rabbits. One of these, Buckthorn, Hazel knew well. He was glad to see him, for he knew for a tough, sturdy fellow, he was considered certain to get into the Ausla as soon as he reached full weight. But I dare say he's impatient, thought Hazel, or he may have come off worse in some scuffle over a doe and taken it hard. Well, with him and Bigwig, at least we shan't be too badly off if we run into any fighting. He did not recognize the other 2 rabbits when Blackberry told him their names. Speedwell and Acorn, he was none the wiser. But this was not surprising, for they were typical outskirters, thin-looking six-monthers, with the strained, wary look of those who are only too well used to the thin end of the stick. They looked curiously at Fiver. From what Blackberry had told them, they had been almost expecting to find Fiver foretelling doom in a poetic torrent. Instead, he seemed more calm and normal than the rest. The certainty of going had lifted a weight from Fiver. More time went slowly by. Blackberry scrambled up into the fern and then returned to the top of the bank, fidgeting nervously and half inclined to bolt at nothing. Hazel and Fiver remained in the ditch, nibbling half-heartedly at the dark grass. At last Hazel heard what he was listening for. A rabbit, or was it 2, approaching from the wood. A few moments later, Bigwig was in the ditch. Behind him came a hefty, brisk-looking rabbit, something over 12 months old. He was well known by sight to all the warren, for his fur was entirely gray, with patches of near white that now caught the moonlight as he sat scratching himself without speaking. This was Silver, a nephew of the Threra, who was serving his first month in the Ausla. Hazel could not help feeling relieved that Bigwig had brought only Silver, a quiet, straightforward fellow who had not yet really found his feet among the veterans. When Bigwig had spoken earlier of sounding out the Ausla, Hazel had been in 2 minds. It was only too likely that they would encounter dangers beyond the warren, and that they would stand in need of some good fighters. Again, if Fiver was right, and the whole warren was in imminent peril, then of course they ought to welcome any rabbit who was ready to join them. On the other hand, there seemed no point in taking particular pains to get hold of rabbits who were going to believe like Toadflax. Wherever we settle down at the end, thought Hazel, I'm determined to see that Pipkin and Fiver aren't sat on and cuffed around until they're ready to run any risk just to get away. But is Bigwig going to see it like that? "You know Silver, don't you?" asked Bigwig, breaking in on his thoughts. Apparently some of the younger fellows in the Ausla have been giving him a thin time, teasing him about his fur, and saying he only got his place because of the Threra. I thought I was going to get some more, but I suppose nearly all the Ausla feel they're very well off as they are. He looked about him. "I say, there aren't many here, are there? Do you think it's worth going on with this idea?" Silver seemed about to speak, then suddenly there was a pattering in the undergrowth above, and 3 more rabbits came over the bank from the wood. Their movement was direct and purposeful, quite unlike the earlier haphazard approach of those who were now gathered in the ditch. The largest of the 3 newcomers was in front, and the other 2 followed him. As though under orders, Hazel, sensing at once that they had nothing in common with himself and his companions, started and sat up tensely. Fiver muttered in his ear, "Oh, Hazel, they've come too." He broke off short. Bigwig turned toward them and stared, his nose working rapidly. The three came straight up to him. "Thaley," said the leader. "You know me perfectly well," replied Bigwig. "And I know you, Holly. What do you want?" "You're under arrest." "Under arrest? What do you mean? What for?" "Spreading dissension and inciting to mutiny. Silver, you're under arrest too, for failing to report Toadflax this evening and causing your duty to devolve on a comrade. You're both to come with me." Immediately, Bigwig fell upon him, scratching and kicking. Holly fought back. His followers closed in, looking for an opening to join the fight, and pinned Bigwig down. Suddenly, from the top of the bank, Buckthorn flung himself headlong into the scuffle, knocked one of the guards flying with a kick from his back legs, and then closed with the other. He was followed a moment later by Dandelion, who landed full on the rabbit whom Buckthorn had kicked. Both guards broke clear, looked round for a moment, and then leapt up the bank and into the wood. "All right." "Oh, sorry." Holly struggled free of Bigwig and crouched on his haunches, scuffling his front paws and growling as rabbits will when angry. He was about to speak when Hazel faced him. "Go," said Hazel firmly and quietly, "or we will kill you." "Do you know what this means?" replied Holly. "I am captain of Owsla. You know that, don't you?" "Go," repeated Hazel, "or you will be killed." "It is you who will be killed," replied Holly. Without another word, he too went back up the bank and vanished into the wood. Dandelion was bleeding from the shoulder. He licked the wound for a few moments and then turned to Hazel. "They won't be long coming back, you know, Hazel," he said. "They've gone to turn out the Owsla, and then we'll be for it right enough." "We gotta go at once," said Fiver. "Yes, the time's come now, all right," replied Hazel. "Come on, down to the stream. Then we'll follow the bank. That'll help us to keep together." "If you'll take my advice," began Bigwig. "If we stay here any longer, I shan't be able to," answered Hazel. With Fiver beside him, he led the way out of the ditch and down the slope. In less than a minute, the little band of rabbits had disappeared into the dim, moonlit night. That's the end of chapter 4, finally. And chapter 5, I gotta go get some garlic and put it in my borscht. Let my eyes settle down a little bit, and then I think I got the video camera fixed good enough to where it won't keep turning off on me. So, I love you, Shannon Ann. Look, when I read to you, it's like I'm holding your hand over a long, long ways away. Maybe that don't make any sense, but for me, it's how I get to be with you right now. Love you.